Love lives here.
Absolutely. So here at Riverside Center for Spiritual Living, this year we are working with the theme of Live Your Best Life. And that is a short way of saying living your highest potential through the transformative power of living. If you're doing that, you're living your best life. Would you agree? Yes. And so if you're doing that, then you're also thriving. Would you agree? Yes. So right now, our fall series is on the theme of thriving. That is the theme for our fall series. And today, we're going to be talking about pure potentiality. It is kind of a carryover from last week. It's kind of dipping in a little bit deeper. Last week, remember, we were talking about trying less and relaxing more. How many of you relaxed more this week? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, okay, 6. How many of you tried a lot this week? 1, 2, 3, 4, okay, so 5, all right. So we have several of you that have relaxed a little bit more, several of you that tried a little bit more, all right. So remember how we were talking about relaxing gets us into that place that is that pure now moment. Once we're in the present, there is nothing else. There is no need to worry. There is no need to fear. There is no anxiety. There is no past for depression. There's no future for anxiety. All it is the pure now moment. And when we're in the pure now moment, we are in pure consciousness, or we are also in pure potentiality, right? And that's what makes it so beautiful, is that we are in that present moment, and that present moment is so pure that everything, all of infinity, everything is present in the now moment. So everything, there is this pure potentiality where all things, absolutely all things, are possible in that now moment. Well, guess what? You're also, what? Pure consciousness, right? Because pure consciousness is all that there is. Consciousness, another name for the divine, another name for spirit, another name for God, another name for love, wisdom, peace that passes all understanding. All the same word, right? So if spirit, the divine, is all that there is, and everything is one within spirit, everything is a manifestation, impartation of spirit, then you too are spirit made manifest. You are the divine taking form, right? We understand this concept by now, I hope. Yes? Maybe? Okay. So, if spirit then is pure potentiality and pure consciousness, and spirit is all that there is, then when we think about it, then what are you? You too are pure potentiality, meaning that all the potential, all the possibility forever and ever and ever is present and available to you, through you, as you, right in this very minute. Right? And that is knowing yourself with a capital S. And so when you know yourself with a capital S, like spirit and self with a capital S, when you know yourself with a capital S, then we don't have anything to fear, do we? There's no fear, there's no anger, there's no annoyance, there's no anxiety, because self, capital S self, doesn't experience those things, because capital S self is pure potentiality, is pure spirit, is pure consciousness. So there's no need for your pure self, your S with a capital self, to worry about what you're having for dinner tomorrow, or to wonder if you left the iron on. Did I put the iron away? Okay. And then all of a sudden, I was like, oh, wait a minute. Did I even put the iron away this morning? I'm glad I can ask my husband. Yes, I did. Okay. I don't recall doing that. But all right. Right? So big S self isn't worried about any of those things. But the small S self, that kind of sounded funny. The small S self, there we go, does, right? Because the small self, the small S self, is worried about approval, is worried about the future, is worried about the past. The small s self sometimes forgets who you truly are and gets caught up in the world of effect, gets caught up into what's called other referencing, meaning that you are defining yourself with a small s by the roles that you play: grandma, grandpa, practitioner, husband, wife, son, daughter, mother, teacher. Whatever role that you play, whatever role or you have accepted in society, right? So your smaller self is defining yourself with some labels, right? Or labels that have been placed on you, and your small s self, enjoys it when people aren't angry at you. And so your small s self makes sure that you're not doing things to anger other people, right? You're monitoring your behaviors, because your behaviors, your thoughts, your actions will create some sort of response to those around you, and you will have responses to those around you, even reactions to those around you in situations and circumstances, not just people, but situations and circumstances as well. So our small self gets caught into that, and the minute that the object that we're referring to, that object of reference, goes away, any power that we have derived from that role or that situation, any power that we may have derived from it, also goes away. So it's a temporary power. So if you take away the role of teacher from a teacher, you take away the role of teacher, whatever power has been invested as the identity of them being a teacher is now gone, right? Does that make sense? Yeah. So with the small s self, there is that sense of separation. And when there is that sense of separation, there is also that efforting and that trying that we were talking about last week, right? That we are trying to make something happen. We are trying hard to do something. We are efforting to do something. We are expending energy to do something, to make something happen, to be someone, to try to control our situation. We're spending energy doing all this. Whereas, if we were in a state of relaxation or awareness of self, then these things tend to take care of themselves, or they tend to flow easier because the perfect action, the perfect idea, the perfect response comes through us naturally to handle or to deal with whatever may be presenting in front of us, right? Yeah? Okay. When we are in our sense of small self, we're experiencing turbulence, mental turbulence, right? So like Betty Davis in All About Eve, fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a bumpy night, right? We're in the state of turbulence when we're other referenced, when we are getting our sense of self from externally, from outside of ourselves rather than internally. We have this turbulence that goes on in our heads, our turbulence that goes on in our hearts. And when we are in a state of turbulence, if that is what we're feeling is turbulence, right? What is it that we are going to experience in our lives? Turbulence, right? Because the state of feeling, the universe responds to the feeling state. So if we're in a state of turbulence, we're going to see turbulence in our lives. And it could be turbulence like on an airplane. Airplanes, we have different states of turbulence. The pilots have states 1 through 6, and flight attendants in the back have 2, 4, and 6. And what that means is 2 is just like a little light chop, like da-da-da, kind of like bouncing a baby on your hip, right? That's a 2, right? 4 is stuff is maybe sloshing a little bit harder to stand, and 6, basically you're hitting the ceiling, which we don't like that. No. So, a little turbulence, is okay. But a little turbulence for a long time gets really exhausting, doesn't it? And severe turbulence is really, it's a shocker, and it's super exhausting right away. It can be traumatic even, right? Or say you're driving up Van Buren on the way to the 60, and you're in the right-hand lane. Those of you who have driven that road know that it's like the entire way, right? But if you get on the left-hand side, it's an occasional and then you have to go back to the right-hand side because of all the trucks, right? Terrible, right? It's a rough road. You don't want to stay on that for very long. You want to come back to the left side where you've got peace and serenity on that road going up to the 60 on Van Buren. So, if we are talking about pure potentiality, where do you think pure potentiality is most accessible? In the turbulence or in the serenity? Serenity? How many say serenity? The left side. Serenity? Yes? Okay. Yes. The pure potentiality, which is consciousness, is greater or more easily accessed when we have that state of serenity, when we enter into a state of silence or a state of stillness. So Deepak Chopra, in his book, The 7 Laws of Spiritual Success, suggests that in order to enter into that pure potentiality, in order to tap that inner resource, that infinite resource that is always supplying, it's forever maintaining and sustaining, it does not ever give out, it is ever flowing, right? In order to tap into that, the first suggestion he makes is to enter into the silence, to be quiet. And he even suggests practicing silence, meaning no talking, no talk, nope, no talkie, no talking, right? And no media, meaning when you enter the silence, you're not listening to any music, you're not watching any TV, you're not scrolling on Facebook, and you're not even reading. It's just silence. And he suggests starting off 5, 10 minutes, half hour, and build your way up to the point of even doing an extended silent retreat. So it's entering that silence because when we're in the silence and we're not being distracted by anything else, then there's greater possibility to open and hear the impressive spirit, to be available to that internal wisdom. But frequently what happens when we enter the silence and we practice silence is our mind, it resists. It starts telling you all the things you need to do. It starts making a list. Oh, you need to get this at the grocery store. You haven't cleaned the bathroom this week yet. You haven't done this. Oh, you need to do that. Oh, and thinking about, when I was little, we used to play this game, and it was so much fun, and worrying about whatever's in the future. And like, we're going to Egypt next year. I guess I really ought to make that payment. And, right? It just starts to churn. Oh, itchy nose. But when you sit and just allow that to happen, and you continue to practice, your mind gets tired. It gets worn out. It's like, you're not getting up. You're not doing anything. You're not shifting. You're just continuing to sit here. Okay, fine. And so your mind will quiet because your pure self, your large self, your capital S self, isn't responding. It's just chilling, just sitting there quiet and just letting it all rattle and go. And so eventually the turbulence in your mind begins to settle the more you practice silence. Another way that he encourages practicing silence, is getting into silence, is of course meditation. And the more we meditate and get into that more meditative state on a regular basis, then we're training the mind to quiet as well. We're training the mind to still. We're training the mind to focus. So he suggests meditation as well. Then, the next one he suggests is non-judgment. Ooh, I heard a groan already. You don't want me to judge? You don't want me to judge people? But it's fun. No. Not judging people and not judging yourself and not judging anything, not labeling anything as good or bad or right or wrong. That's what non-judgment is. Because the minute we get into judgment, the minute we're starting to think of binary thinking of yes, no, right, wrong, good, bad, we get into that binary thinking because what we're trying to do is we're trying to figure out and we're trying to solve something. We're trying to figure out something. But the minute we get into that non-binary, or the minute we get into that binary thinking of yes, no, right, wrong, labeling, then we're judging. That's another word, judging, labeling. When we get into that mode, then we are excluding all other possibilities. And when we get into that judging, yes, no, right, wrong, good, bad, right? What is this doing? You see how this is doing this? If I were splashing in water, what would be happening? I'd be creating turbulence in water, wouldn't I? Because I'm labeling this yes, no, good, bad, right? It's starting to create turbulence in my mind. It's starting to create turbulence in my life. It's starting to create this turbulence, which then means that it's not a stillness. It's not a quietude. So practicing non-judgment is another way of entering into the silence. You may have heard the story of the farmer whose horse ran away. And the neighbors came by and go, "Oh man, I'm so sorry to hear that your horse ran away. That is just terrible." And the farmer says, "Maybe." And then the next day, the horse returns and the horse has brought 7 wild horses with it, right? And the farmer... And so all the neighbors are like, "Wow, what a great reversal of fortune. You know, your horse ran away and now you have 8 horses. That's wonderful." And the farmer says, "Maybe." The next day, his son is trying to break one of these wild stallions and ends up breaking his leg, gets thrown from the horse and breaks his leg. Again, the neighbors come and say, "Oh my gosh, that's so terrible. That's so awful that, your son broke his leg. We just feel so terrible." And he goes, "Maybe." The next day, the army comes through their village and they are gathering all of the young men they're conscripting them into service, and they don't take the young man because he's got a broken leg. And so all the villagers go, "Wow, what a great fortune. Your son didn't have to go into the army." And the farmer says, "Maybe." Right? In that story, it's talking about the non-judgment of just being present with what is, because in that presence of what is, not labeling one or the other, good, bad, misfortune or fortune, not labeling it, then it creates an opening for another way, a greater possibility to enter into our lives, because it's just creating that spaciousness, like we were talking about with the relaxation. It's creating the spaciousness. Yes? So non-judgment is the third way he talks about it. And the fourth way he talks about getting in one with the stillness is to enter and commune with nature, to get outside, to sit outside, to take a walk, to sit underneath a tree, but just to be outside in the presence of nature without really having to do anything. Because when we sit outside in the presence of nature, we can more easily see and understand and feel and be in touch with our oneness, our unity with all life. Would you agree with that? Yeah. So what Deepak says in this, through this here is, it's still going to slide. There we go. Is that stillness actually is the first step of manifestation. That stillness is the first part of creation, of co-creation. Now, why would this be? Because if you consider that water is a metaphor for consciousness, right? If you have a still pond and you drop a stone or a pebble into that pond, what happens? It ripples across the water, right? It ripples across the stillness, yes? Now, if you think of a turbulent, stormy, hurricane-driven ocean and you drop the Empire State Building in it, it might make a big splash, but is it really going to make that big of a difference? No, because the water is already turbulent. And so it doesn't matter how large the object is that you throw in that turbulent water, because the water is already turbulent, it's not going to have the impact. Does that make sense? So if we think of it from a co-creation piece, if we get in the stillness and the quiet, and we drop the seed, we drop the idea, we plant the seed, we plant the thought, we plant the belief, we plant the feeling into that still, calm water, then it has the opportunity to ripple through consciousness to manifestation. However, if we're turbulent and we're like splashing around and flinging around and what have you, and we drop something in, there's already all this turbulence, there's all this noise, there's all this background, there's all this mess that's going on, that all we're doing when we're splashing and doing all this is we're just creating more turbulence, right? We're not able to just drop the stone, drop the idea, and allow it to ripple to manifestation. So if we are present and we are relaxed, and then we enter into that state and we just like do our spiritual mind treatment or affirmative thought or your feeling and sitting with that and placing that, it's kind of like an offering. It's kind of like this gentle placing. Then it has the opportunity to ripple through consciousness, to ripple through the quantum field, to then cause something to happen. Yes? Whereas if you're efforting, you're just splashing about, and you're not really getting anywhere. You're not really reaching the other side. Another way of looking at this, my dear friends, is if you just like lay one hand on top of your arm. Go ahead right now. Just lay it there. And just notice what you feel. You're not going to push into it. You're just laying it there. Notice you might feel the little hairs on your arm, or if you're wearing sleeves, that you might feel the texture of the fabric. You might feel the temperature. Just notice how much you can feel, how much you can sense just by laying your arm or laying your hand on your other arm. What are you feeling? What are you noticing? You noticing a lot of fine details? Noticing the temperature? Now, gently press your fingertips into your arm and continue to press. As you're efforting more, notice that your sense of perception, your sense of ability to notice the fine details is gone, and that you've actually pressed through, and now all you're feeling is maybe a little bit of muscle. Maybe even if you're where your hand is, you might feel the hardness of the bone, but you can't feel nearly as much, right? Because what you're doing right now is you're efforting. You're pushing hard. You're trying hard. You're efforting. You're pushing. You're creating resistance. Whereas if you soften back up again, you can begin to feel so much more. And with skill, you begin to learn how to feel through the muscle, through to the bone, and you can even feel the blood moving through your veins. You can feel small twitches in the muscle. You can feel all kinds of things by having that lighter touch, that lighter pressure. So same with creating the waves, right? Creating the ripple. I invite you also to try it later. Get out a coin, like a penny or a quarter or something, and just lay your pointer finger down on top of it and just see if you can feel the face of the president that's on the coin. And then push it into the table and then see what you feel and notice how your sense of perception, your sense of feeling completely changes. So in co-creating, we sit in the stillness. We sit in the infinite possibility. And in that infinite possibility is infinite potentiality. That infinite potentiality, if there's only stillness, there's just the infinite creativity possible. It takes dynamic action, which is you co-creating, which is your bound self, your somewhat limited self, your individualized self, working with Spirit, working with the divine, to then begin to co-create your life, co-create that which you are wishing to experience, to co-create living your highest potential, to co-create living your best life. Because the actions that come are actions that are revealed by you having placed that intention in the water and allowing it to ripple. And then you take action upon that which has been revealed. Much easier than efforting, wouldn't you say? Trying, pushing, harding, right? So much easier to work with it rather than to resist it. So, this is what is meant by seeking first the kingdom, not kingdom, but seeking first the kingdom, the relationship with self, the relationship with the divine, the relationship with your capital S self. You seek that first. Get present with that first. And then all things are added. Yes? Yes. So, this week, I invite you to practice sitting in the silence, to practice non-judgment, to practice communing with nature, and still the turbulence of your mind, opening yourself to pure potentiality. And so it is. So I invite our practitioners and core council to please stand and surround the sanctuary. So I invite us just to take a moment and to breathe in here and now, just relaxing into this moment, this absolute perfection that is, making ourselves aware of the presence of the perfection, the presence of the oneness, the isness, the allness, the fullness that is back of all things. Relaxing into it, knowing that there is nothing to fear, nothing to worry about, because there is just this one life, this one consciousness. And it is this consciousness that is the very essence of all of life, of all of creation. It is this one consciousness, this non-stuffed, this non-material, from which all matter, all wealth, all health, all possibility, all peace, all harmony, all joy, all bliss, all abundance rises and is formed. The formless, the oneness, becomes the all. For it is truly all that there is. And so I recognize that this oneness is the very nature of who I am. It is my capital S self. It is pure potentiality. It is pure possibility. It is pure consciousness. And therefore, I must be that as well, because there is just this one. I am inseparable from it. And as I know that I am inseparable from it, I know that each one gathered here this day is inseparable from it, because there is just this one. Living, moving, breathing, and having its being in, through, and as all of creation, all of life, perfectly just as it is right here, right now, in this moment. And so I speak my word for this community, knowing that we allow pure potentiality, that capital S self, to be front and center, to guide and direct, to inspire, to spark joy, to guide us in every idea, every direction that we are bound to go, that we listen and we follow with an open heart, and we actively participate and co-create with it. We gently place our ideas, our beliefs, our thoughts into the stillness behind all of the noise, the stillness that is in the background, the stillness of pure potentiality that is ever present. And we know that all of our joys are maintained and sustained. Every need is met. For this is the true nature of life, the true nature of the universe, the true nature of spirit. It maintains and sustains its beloved creation, withholding nothing. And in knowing this, there is no fear, there is no anxiety, there is no worry. There simply is knowing that we know that we know. And for this we give gratitude. Gratitude for an abundant life. Gratitude for a life of love. Gratitude for a life of health and wholeness, of peace and prosperity. Gratitude for the love of our friends and family, the relationships, the love of all creatures, great and small, the love of our earth, this planet that we live on, the interconnectedness of life. And I release this word now, knowing it is done, knowing it is so. I let it be, and so it is.